Scout Commander Kale Veyron had seen 100 worlds fall silent before the Velthari advance. He had watched civilizations crumble in days, their defenders scatter like dust in solar wind. He was not a creature given to fear. But as his cloaked reconnaissance vessel drifted silently through the upper atmosphere of the third planet in the Sol system, something unfamiliar began crawling up his spine. "Run the scan again," he ordered. His second, Pre, leaned over the console with trembling fingers. "Commander, the scan is correct. We have confirmed it 3 times now." "That is impossible." "The numbers do not lie, sir." Kale pressed his 4-fingered hand against the viewport and stared down at the landmass below, a continent the humans called North America. What he saw defied every intelligence report the Velthari High Command had sent him with. They had told him Earth was a divided world, fractured by politics and rivalry, incapable of unified military response. They had told him the humans had perhaps 2 million organized soldiers at best. A disorganized, primitive species still burning fossil fuels and arguing over imaginary borders. The scan read 47 million. 47 million armed combatants. In one region alone. "Pull back the orbital array," Kale said quietly. "Show me the full picture." The holographic display bloomed open above the command table. Continent after continent lit up in red, not the scattered red of a nervous, unprepared species, but the deep, pulsing crimson of an empire that had been waiting. Africa. Europe. Asia. Australia. South America. Every landmass crawling with organized military formations. Supply chains stretching like arteries. Weapons depots glowing white-hot with energy signatures. The total count appeared in the center of the display. 312 million. Kale stared at the number for a long time. "They knew," Pre whispered. "They knew we were coming." 12,000 kilometers below, Admiral Darian Voss stood on the observation deck of the UES Ironclad, the flagship of Earth's unified defense fleet, and watched the alien scout vessel's thermal signature shimmer against the dark blue of the upper atmosphere. She had a cup of black coffee in her hand, her 4th that morning, and the calm expression of someone who had been preparing for exactly this moment for 11 years. "They're scanning us," said Lieutenant Commander Joe from the navigation station. "Good," said Voss. "Should we jam their sensors, Admiral?" "No." She took a slow sip. "Let them see everything. Every ship. Every battalion. Every bunker." She turned from the viewport, her silver-streaked hair cropped close to her skull, her dark eyes carrying the weight of a decade of preparation. "Let them count." Joe exchanged a glance with the tactical officer, a sharp-eyed woman named New York, who simply gave a small nod of understanding. Voss set her coffee down and pulled up the global deployment map on the central display. The numbers were staggering even to her, and she had built this force herself. After the first alien contact signal had been intercepted 11 years ago, not a greeting, not a curiosity, but a targeting transmission, Earth had done something it had almost never done in its entire history. It had agreed. Every nation. Every old rival. Every grudge-holding government and suspicious military bloc had sat down at one table and made one decision: if they come, we will be ready. The UN Security Council had been replaced by the Unified Defense Command. Defense budgets across the globe had quietly tripled, then quadrupled. Conscription programs had been framed as civil preparedness initiatives. Manufacturing had shifted. Research had accelerated. The public had been kept calm with carefully managed messaging, but beneath the surface, an entire civilization had transformed itself into something the universe had perhaps never seen before. A species that had spent 10,000 years making war on itself, and therefore knew war in a way no sheltered, top-of-the-food chain alien conqueror ever could. "Admiral," said New York from the tactical station, "we're detecting a change in the scout vessel's orbit. They may be preparing to withdraw." Voss nodded slowly. "Open a channel." Kale Veyron nearly choked when the communication request came through on a Velthari standard frequency. The humans were hailing him. They had not only detected his cloaked vessel, they were inviting him to talk. He steadied himself and accepted the channel. The face that appeared on his display was a human female, perhaps 60 of their solar cycles in age. She wore a dark uniform with no visible rank insignia, a choice that, he would later learn, was entirely deliberate. Her expression was not threatening. It was almost polite. Which, somehow, was worse. Scout Commander Kale Veyron, the human said, pronouncing his name with startling accuracy. My name is Admiral Darian Voss. Welcome to Earth's defensive perimeter. A cold silence stretched across the bridge of Kale's vessel. His crew stared at him. You know my name, he said carefully. We've known about your mission for 4 months, Voss replied. We've been tracking your fleet since it crossed the heliopause. 22 vessels, Velthari long-range assault class, carrying approximately 80,000 ground troops and enough orbital bombardment capacity to glass a mid-tier civilization. She paused. You were not expecting us to know that. No, Kale admitted, because there was very little point in pretending otherwise. I'd like to give you something to take back to your high command, Voss said. She touched a control, and her display, which Kale could now see she had deliberately left visible to his sensors, filled with the global deployment numbers. The hundreds of millions. The fleet formations. The planetary defense grid. This is what you're looking at if you proceed. Kale studied the numbers in silence. 312 million ground troops. 41,000 naval vessels, a number that included everything from destroyers to the 12 new planetary defense cruisers his sensors had somehow missed until this moment, because they had been buried inside mountains. A global missile network. Orbital defense platforms disguised as weather satellites. And beneath all of it, something even more unsettling, the humans were calm. No panic in the transmissions his team had been intercepting. No civilian evacuation chaos. No political fragmentation. Just an entire civilization standing quietly behind a woman with a coffee cup, watching him count. You built all of this, Kale said slowly, because of one intercepted signal. We built all of this, Voss replied, because that's what we do. She leaned slightly forward. Commander, my species has been fighting wars since before we had written language. We fought with sticks. We fought with bronze. We fought with gunpowder and with atoms and with signals bounced off satellites. We have been terrible to each other in ways I hope you never have to catalog. But when something comes for us from outside, she gestured broadly, taking in the planet below, the fleet around her, the 300 million soldiers standing in formations across every continent, we stop fighting each other. She let that sit. We are not asking for peace, she continued. We are not begging. We are offering you a choice. Return to your high command. Tell them what you saw. Tell them the numbers. Tell them that the species they marked as a soft target 11 years ago has spent every one of those years building the largest unified military force in this arm of the galaxy. Her eyes were steady, unhurried, almost kind. And tell them that we are very, very tired of being underestimated. Kale Veyron's report to the Velthari High Command lasted 3 hours. He presented every scan, every intercept, every confirmed number. He described the human admiral's composure. He described the mountains that had turned out to be weapons. He described the 312 million soldiers who had not been drafted in panic but had been training, quietly, for a decade. At the end of the report, the High Chancellor asked, "What is your recommendation, Scout Commander?" Kale thought about the woman with the coffee cup. The lieutenant named Joe who hadn't blinked. The tactical officer New York whose calm had been almost meditative. He thought about a species that had clawed its way through 10,000 years of self-inflicted warfare and come out the other side not broken, but practiced. My recommendation, Kale said, is that we find a different planet. The fleet turned around that same cycle. They did not come back. On Earth, Admiral Darian Voss finished her coffee, submitted her after-action report in 4 paragraphs, and went home for the first time in 6 months. She slept for 14 hours. When she woke, there was a message from the Unified Defense Command asking what to do with 300 million soldiers now that the threat had passed. She wrote back 2 words. Keep training.